Elavin Mourne had worn a dozen faces in the service of the Obsidian Spire, but never one so crude as the rough mask of a human spearman. The cloak hid his ears, soot dulled the undertone of his skin, and a battered helm shadowed his eyes. To the humans of Thornwall, he was just another wanderer who had taken the gate captain's offer of coin and a spear. To Elavin, he was something else, a dark elf scout about to stand inside a human line against an old enemy, Ironmaw. He had read their name in blood-stained marginalia of Duergar ledgers and in the terse reports of surface patrols, a mixed mercenary company of surface orcs and outcast Duergar, veterans of the deep war that had nearly broken his people centuries ago. They wore their history on their armor, jagged lower rims on their helms, hammered and filed into crude iron teeth, so that when they lowered their heads and advanced in formation, it looked as though a single metal jaw was closing on its prey. Ironmaw had broken 3 keeps in 2 years. Garrison commanders spoke their name like a storm warning. When the horn sounded over the frost-bitten hills, Elavin stood atop Thornwall's parapet and watched that iron jaw crest the rise. Shields locked, helms bowed, they advanced in practiced silence. No bluster, no ragged charge, only the steady clatter of metal and the soft thump of disciplined feet. This was not a rabble. This was the same company whose banner he had once seen flapping over a smoking outpost built on what had been Drow supply tunnels. He told himself he joined the defense to study humans in battle. It was not entirely a lie. He braced his spear as the humans around him moved. Some were shaking, fierce and pricked sharp in the air, but their voices did not break. Orders snapped out, short and understood. Brace the west gate. Pitch to the murder holes. Archers, second rank. Their fear was not running wild. It flowed, directed like water along carved channels. Ironmaw's first impact hit Thornwall like a hammer. Their shield jaws slammed against the gate, hooks bit into the stone, grapnels flew, arrows hissed from the walls. Elavin felt the old contempt stir. Surface-born brutes and sellswords, all of them. But it snagged on memory, on those iron-teethed helms glimpsed once in the glow of burning spider-silk tapestries. The gate shuddered. A section of wall cracked and spat dust. Elavin found himself shoved into the line, shoulder to shoulder, with a mud-faced boy no older than 20. The boy's breath came fast, the air around him sharp with adrenaline, but he did not retreat when the timber before them splintered. When an Ironmaw orc crashed through the gap, the boy snarled, stepped into the swing, and drove his spear up under the iron teeth. It was ugly, clumsy, and it worked. Ironmaw's famed discipline met Thornwall's cramped alleys and narrow stairs and began to fray. Their iron jaw could close on open ground. Here, carts and livestock lanes broke their formations. Humans slammed doors, dragged furniture into choke points, and turned every corner into an ambush. They had not memorized tactics. They had prepared the ground to improvise on it. Midway through the battle, Elavin saw their commander clearly for the first time. Brass, they called him, broad-shouldered, greying 50-something, which meant already well over half his life spent. His right hand was splintered with a torn strip of cloth and a sliver of wood. Heat flared there, pain bright as a coal to Elavin's senses, but Brass's voice stayed level. "Close that alley." "Burn the grain if you must," he rasped, pointing with his bound hand. "We live first, we eat later." Humans obeyed with a tired sort of eagerness that Elavin could not categorize. On the inner wall, an ash-streaked woman with no armor and no insignia stood in the wild mess of shattered stone and shouted directions that cut clean through the din. She pointed at gaps, at wounded, at fallen beams. Men older than her moved when she spoke. At one point a younger soldier grabbed her arm, babbling about the breach at the west gate. She looked at him with an expression Elavin could not name, something that wrapped grief and impatience and a strange, stubborn hope into one, said a few words, and he swallowed his panic, nodded, and started hauling stones. Even Ironmaw's veterans faltered under that kind of opposition. Their shield line sagged under boiling pitch, and improvised fire traps sparked from broken oil lamps. Their orcish vanguard tried to force the narrow stairs and died one by one, too big to maneuver. He watched a Duergar sergeant, beard plaited in iron rings, eyes like dim coals, glance up at the walls, measure the human positions, and know they had misjudged. By the 4th hour, the iron jaw cracked. Ironmaw's mercenaries, who had once marched through Drow blood in neat ranks, broke into fragments and fled. A few dropped their weapons and raised their hands. Thornwall did not cheer. There was only a spreading quiet, like the echo after a song ends. 11 human bodies lay still when the counting was done. Moore groaned and bled on stone. Elavin waited for the collapse, for the delayed terror, for the fear scent to finally spill unchecked now that the danger had passed. Instead, grief hit like a wave. The ash-streaked woman knelt by a dead man, resting her forehead on his chest. Someone sobbed openly, shoulders shaking. Brast stood over one fallen soldier a long time, jaw clenched so tight Elavin heard his teeth grind. Then Brast straightened. "We rebuild before dark," he said, voice rough and frayed. "Walls first, then food." He hesitated, just a heartbeat, looking again at the dead at his feet. "We'll name them after." The shift from raw grief to motion took less than half a minute. Elavin, still hidden deep in his borrowed cloak, found a stone in his hands and did what everyone else did. He carried it. The mud-faced boy who had stood beside him at the gate lay under a torn banner now, a pair of dice still clutched in his cooling fingers. Elavin set the stone down, glanced once at the dice and moved on. By dusk Thornwall stood scarred but whole. Fires burned in the courtyard, casting light on patched walls and bandaged hands. Someone thrust a tin mug of water at Elavin without looking closely at his face. He caught his reflection in it, a smear of soot, shadows intentionally shifted just enough to pass among them. He had come to watch humans in fear. Instead, he had stood beside them while an old enemy broke its teeth on their stubborn stone. When he slipped away that night through a half-collapsed section of the outer wall, the smoke from Thornwall's fires followed him out into the greywood. On a ridge above the garrison, he turned back once. Ironmaw's torn banner lay somewhere in the mud behind those walls, trampled under human boots. "They are not what we thought," he said softly into the cold air, and he did not know whether he meant the humans or Ironmaw. For a dark elf who had spent a century certain of both, the uncertainty tasted like ash and something uncomfortably close to respect.